Hey guys, welcome back to the Discipline Life Podcast, the place where we talk all about power differential relationships and domestic discipline. I'm Arya, and this is my husband, Coda.
Hello, everyone.
And on today's podcast, Coda's going to be taking the lion's share of the talking today. I am not feeling well, but I am here, and I will be giving my thoughts periodically.
As you can tell, she's wheezing just a little bit. She's got a little bit of some type of cold or something. We're not sure what it is, but
Just the change of the season.
yeah. So we finally got just a little bit, but it's enough where it's taking a toll on people's systems out here. Knock on wood, I haven't gotten anything yet. We'll hope that that's going to be the case. But do you want to say the topic today? Or you want me to say it?
I can go ahead.
Okay.
So we are going to be continuing our discussion on debunking common misconceptions about domestic discipline. Last week we talked all about, does domestic discipline infantilize a woman? And on today's podcast, we are going to be discussing, does submission need to look a certain way? Is submission a one-size-fits-all?
Great topic for today. And so, as usual, what I will do is give you the short answer, and then we'll go into the long answer, right? So, obviously, my answer is going to be no. There is no one-size-fits-all to this, because if there was, relationships would be a heck of a lot easier to navigate, if you will. We know, and I'll just start here, we know that relationships are great things. They bring us all kinds of different wonderful things, but the issue sometimes can be that obviously both people are different. You can easily start with, in the relationship, there is a man and there's a woman, and newsflash, everyone out there, they're different. They're very different. She sees the world completely different than he sees the world, and vice versa. And those are complementary things, but those can also be things that from time to time can, if you're not careful, they can butt heads. You can have issues because one is not seeing because one doesn't see the world like the other. That sometimes can be an issue. So obviously, we've always talked about in this, that's why it's important to have this domestic discipline structure built into your relationship. And why we have talked about many times on this podcast, continue to, and obviously we have a podcast for this reason. We believe that relationship needs to be structured in a certain way so that both the man and the woman can succeed in their goal of having a healthy relationship, a healthy marriage, being parents to children perhaps, and have a healthy relationship with them, and also demonstrate to them a healthy relationship between mom and dad. Now, that being said, within that fence of a domestic discipline relationship, there are certain things that couples will, where the couples will put the fence, that may be totally different than the next couple and where they put the fence. One of the reasons we're talking about this today is this has come up several times, both in our questions on YouTube. I think maybe questions in Discord, or no, it's just been on YouTube.
No, it's really like some comments that we've gotten.
Just some comments that we've gotten, and a little bit came up the other night in our live stream as well. And so we felt like this was the perfect segue into talking about really emphasizing how one relationship in domestic discipline is not necessarily, it may have similarities, is not going to look like the next one. And specifically, here's where I would like to start. You let me know if you think that I'm starting in a bad place, by the way. But I'm obviously, as you can tell, trying to take the majority of the load off of Arya today. But I think the best places where we start is, first of all, what specifically your rules are. Our rules are going to be potentially completely different than a couple that is in domestic discipline, even that listens to us right now. I definitely know that we have couples that the way their domestic discipline relationship works, their rules are probably totally different. There might be a few that cross over, but maybe not. And the way we structure our rules can be different. There may be one of our rules that for Arya, one rule that's on the first tier, which is not a big deal, might be a rule for you that's on the second tier, maybe even the third tier, depending on how many that is, or what that specifically that rule is. The other thing is we may have a rule, or a group of rules, that deals with a certain area that Arya feels like she really wants to and needs to improve on, and she needs me to hold her accountable to those, where that's an area your spouse doesn't struggle in at all. So maybe that's not even on your rules. The other thing might be is that you may look at our rules, if you were to look at our rules and go, wow, I don't think you have enough rules. Because some of you may say, wow, we've got a bunch of rules, because there's a bunch of things that my spouse wanted me to work with her on. Or, again, the opposite. Wow, we don't have as many rules as you guys. We only have maybe four or five different ones. My point being, in all of these examples, that's okay. That's what is supposed to happen. Your relationship, your domestic discipline relationship, is supposed to look unique to your relationship. Where we get into trouble here is when we start comparing, and this is anything in life, when we start comparing our relationship to another domestic discipline relationship. Or, this can even be bad, do not compare your domestic discipline relationship to a non-domestic discipline relationship. That's a really bad idea. Because the whole reason you decided to do a domestic discipline relationship is because it worked for you, and you didn't like the norm, for lack of a better word, of what other relationships are doing. That's fine. Don't compare them. That's a really bad idea to do that, is to compare your relationship to another. Just like we made this mistake, I think, before we were parents. You correct me if you think I'm wrong. Before we were parents, I'll tell you what, we had it all, and I think all of us were this way if you have kids. Man, we got it all figured out. We know exactly how we're going to raise our kids, and I'm sad to say, at least for me, I don't know about Arya, but we'd be in a restaurant, kid would be acting up, right? And, of course, I'm pridefully patting myself on the back like, oh, when I'm a dad, I'm not going to allow anything that to happen. Well, guess what? We were blessed with a beautiful daughter. We love her very much. We didn't know she was going to be autistic. We didn't know that she was, you would have thought this would have dawned on me. She was going to have her own unique personality. Imagine that. Her own pluses and minuses, all these different things. The good thing that came out of all of that is that as we began to parent her, we began to have compassion for other parents. We began to realize that, wow, some of the things that we really judged other parents for before we had kids, we felt bad about that. We shouldn't have, because who knows, they were maybe dealing with the same challenges that we were. And many of you who have kids that are potentially special needs, autistic, any of those things, they need a different way of parenting. Not just based on that, but also based on their personality. It's the same thing with a domestic discipline relationship. The moment we start comparing, when whatever it is, parenting, relationships, any of those things, that's when it can come off the rails. And so this is that thing that our mothers taught us from the very beginning. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Worry about what you're doing and what is successful for your relationship. Did you want to interject here?
Yes. Let me think, because you just went a whole lot of places there.
I was trying to bring it back to the point as much as I could.
I think the biggest problem that I've been seeing is that there are a certain subset of people that believe that submission has to look one way, and it's not necessarily a comparison from like oh, what are they doing and what are we doing? Are we doing it right? Are we doing it wrong? It's their relationship, and specifically her submission, doesn't look the way my submission looks, or doesn't look the way I would run my household. Therefore, it's invalid.
Sorry, I was slowly getting there, but you brought us right there. That's great. That's great. Did you want to say anything else? I know you're. I'll go ahead and carry that if you want.
Go ahead.
And so she's absolutely right. So where I was getting with that is, now that we've established, your relationship doesn't have to look like everybody else's relationship. The rules are not going to look the same, all those things. Now what Aria just brought up, what you potentially think in your relationship is submission or not submission is going to depend on the person that you married and her personality, knowing her strengths and weaknesses, knowing her background. All of those things carry in, and also where your tolerance level is. There may be things that if people saw Ari and I's relationship in public, there is potential that someone may go, well, I don't think she's very submissive. Well, good, to a certain extent, my response is, well, good for you. But that doesn't matter. You're not in our relationship. You don't know. You haven't been there since day one and actually seen how this relationship has grown, how this relationship has really really blossomed. And you don't understand also where the tolerance level is from the standpoint. There are things that you may consider disrespect that Arya may say to me that I've totally told her, I want you to do that. I've given you permission to do that because I want to know where she's at. I want her to say and do certain things that to the couple sitting next to us may go, well, I don't think she's very submissive. Well, that doesn't matter.
You have given me explicit permission to be direct in my communication.
Because let me just newsflash for you all. I need directness. Hints don't work. Subtle hints don't work. I need directness.
And you have also given me permission, liberty, leeway, however you want to say it, to speak freely. You don't limit my speech.
The only thing that we have established with her speech is that she must say it in a respectful way. And she's never been like this, but what I mean by that is ranting and raving, cussing. She's never been that kind of person at all.
Appropriate language, appropriate tone, appropriate timing.
Otherwise, she can say whatever she wants. I mentioned way in a podcast a long time ago that I used to work for Apple. When I was at Apple, I don't know if they still do this, but while I was there, they practiced this thing called fearless feedback, and I've talked about it before, but I want to mention here again. What fearless feedback is we could say anything we wanted, even to our managers, as long as it was respectful. Because why? They understood that just because you were in a hierarchy, just because you were a manager, perhaps, that didn't mean you could just get away with whatever you wanted, meaning it didn't mean that you could just treat employees however you wanted. And all of the managers that I worked for were always excellent people, and sometimes they didn't even realize that they'd said something in a very hurtful way. And fearless feedback was a great way for me to be able to go to them and say, hey, I know you may not even realize that you said this, but the way you just told me to do this, I have no problem with that, but that really hurt my feelings. And a lot of times they go, wow, I didn't even realize I did that. I'm really sorry. And that mended the relationship. But we could say whatever we wanted as long as it was in a respectful way, as she said, not abusive language, in a good tone, all of those things. And so that was something that when we started our relationship, I said, no, I want to know what's on your mind. I want to know that. I don't want you to keep things from me. If you feel like I potentially could make a bad choice, before I make that choice, I want you to interject and give me your opinion. I just want all of these things done in a very respectful manner. That was the only thing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you set out in our relationship to tame me in any way.
No, because that's impossible. No, I don't mean that. No. But no, because the way that you are, I liked you. I don't feel like there was anything to tame. Does that make sense?
Because you weren't looking for a demure, soft-spoken, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but mousy personality.
Right. And but to be fair to you, there are times where, and you're not mousy, but there are times where you are those things, though, where you are very just
When it's
reserved,
appropriate.
when it's appropriate, right? But no, especially behind closed doors when it came to certain things. And I use this analogy: if we're driving in a car and there's a huge pothole that potentially could blow a tire, and I don't see it, I want her to call out and tell me that it's there. And that's in anything in life. And so I don't want her to just go, oh, well, he's got it all under control and I should never interject it. No, I want her to do those things.
Because you look at me as your helper, as your partner, as your person that you're doing life with, you know. Yes, you have authority over me, but you didn't want me to, like, I'm not an accessory. I'm not a possession.
That's right.
I am here to be the other half of this relationship and bring all of my uniqueness and value to the table. And you knew that before we got married.
Right, exactly. And even though we didn't get married knowing that we were going to do domestic discipline, our relationship moved us into that. And again, we established rules and we established boundaries where it makes sense for us. And so again, where someone might think Arya is not being submissive to my authority, they would not know because they're not in this relationship.
Also, that's not to say that if a man wants a more demure, soft-spoken, again, not in a derogatory way, but mousy woman, that's not a bad thing, but choose wisely.
Right. And then also remember that even for us, we would not be judgmental of that relationship. We wouldn't make snap judgments about how that relationship looks. Because some people have made snap judgments that if you marry a woman like that, oh, she must be abused. She must be... No, that's just her personality. That's just who she is. And there's nothing wrong with that.
But don't marry don't marry someone like me.
That's what you want, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, don't marry somebody that's very outspoken, very, I wouldn't say I'm very opinionated, but I like to have those friendly discussions, those friendly banters.
Well, I'm glad you have an opinion. I mean, I want you to have one.
I wouldn't say I'm opinionated in a bad way, but some of our best, like, relationship building discussions is when we take opposite sides on a point and we can kind of both talk our points out, and we may not even agree at the end of that discussion, but so all I'm saying,
I would say 9 times out of 10 we do, though.
Yeah. But I would say just don't marry someone like that if you want someone that's going to come under your authority to the point of never questioning anything, not having her own opinion, not having those strong personality traits. If you want someone that's much more quote unquote naturally submissive in her personality, choose someone that way.
Yeah, and that is not to say that if you're watching and you're more like Arya's personality, that you're not submissive. You are.
Submission is for everyone. It's not.
Yes.
Submission is not a inherent personality trait. Submission is for everyone if they want it.
And I think we talked about this last week in the podcast when I used the example of the police officer. Like, we have to submit, or maybe I did this on Coda's Corner. It was something where I mentioned that we have to submit to police officers because they are out there to protect us, to make sure that we are abiding by the rules. But by submitting to police officers, unfortunately, like some people think that somehow that's a bad thing, that somehow that's being oppressed or whatever. No, it's not a bad thing to submit to authority. Now, does that mean that some people that have that authority over you aren't going to abuse that? No, that's not what that means. There probably will be some, but that doesn't mean the majority will. And respecting authority is not a bad thing.
And I was just going to say the difference between a domestic discipline relationship, or really any relationship, the difference between that and the authority that we have in society is, at the end of the day, you have to listen to that police officer because he's been granted that authority from the law. In our relationship, I choose to submit to Coda out of reverence for the authority that he has in our home. And that's almost an authority that I have mutually agreed that he has. You don't get to mutually agree that the police officer has authority. He just does. And at the end of the day, you don't have to like him. You don't have to talk to him again most of the time, unless you live in a very small town.
Hopefully, if you live in a small town, you like your police officers.
But there's no ongoing relationship typically with your police force, where there is an ongoing relationship here. So not only am I more invested in building that relationship through my submission, Coda's more invested in building that relationship through his leadership.
And the other thing I would say is that every relationship is going through some type of growth. The way our relationship was when we first started a domestic discipline relationship looks totally different to where it is now. And I would even say 10 years from now, in the year 2033, oh my gosh, I'm glad to know I'll be alive then, is going to look totally different than it does now. There are going to be areas where we may look back at these and go, we've totally changed our point of view here. We've totally, our relationship has gotten changed here. We've changed one of the rules here, or several of the rules. But the point being is that there are certain parameters within a domestic discipline relationship that we've talked about before, the pillars, if you remember the pillar podcasts. And as long as you're within those pillars, that's being inside the fence, you can make the certain areas of the fence closer or wider as you want. It doesn't mean that the person in your relationship, because it may be a little wider in our relationship and shorter in yours, that somehow your domestic discipline relationship is better, or your spouse is better than my spouse. That's not the truth there, and that is where it becomes a judgmental in a very negative way.
And I would say that the only person that gets to decide what is and is not acceptable is that head of household.
That's exactly right.
And quite frankly, it's disrespectful to the head of household to complain about his wife or his submissive partner's behavior.
And even if you want to, do that behind closed doors. I would never do that to somebody to their face, right? With anything. I mean, gosh, we have dog owners out here that drive me crazy. I'm never going to go knock on their door, though, and go, you should be a better dog owner and you should do this, even though I want to. I'm not going to do that, because there's just a certain amount of courtesy in a society that you give, right?
Did you just equate your leadership over me to owning a dog?
Well, no, I didn't mean it that way. But the point, what I'm trying to say is that there is every domestic discipline relationship, as we've talked about already on this podcast, is going to look different. But the reason we're harping on this so much is we've gotten so many comments of people saying, well, we don't think that you're very submissive, or we don't think that you guys really embody this relationship because of X, Y, and Z. Well, first of all, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. But second of all is we didn't start this podcast to show us as we are the example. We started this podcast to try to share with people who are going through a domestic discipline relationship, to try to help them through what we're in, by us sharing what our relationship looks like, to try to see, hey, would these things work for your relationship where potentially you're struggling? And we just want to use this really as a sharing platform.
Yeah, this is to kind of show what we have done in our relationship, what our relationship looks like, because I know we fall outside the parameters of the quote-unquote norm, what's presented as the ideal, and we just wanted to show, like, hey, even if you don't fit this criteria, that you can still have this relationship structure. This relationship structure is adaptable to different personality types, to different power structures. You don't have to have this, very strict structure in order to call yourself a domestic discipline relationship.
And in fact, there have been times with those of you, and we've been so appreciative, those of you who have come to our live streams and have shared with us in Discord, where Aria at times has come to me, or I've been with her and we've gone, you guys have shared with us what your domestic discipline relationship looks like. And we celebrate that. We get excited. And newsflash, some of them look totally different than ours, but we've never sat there and go, oh, they're doing it wrong, or I don't know how that works. No, not at all, because we're not in that relationship with you. I'm not in the relationship with your wife. Aria's not in that relationship with your husband. And so but we celebrated the differences. Like, wow, that's really cool that they're doing that. Their domestic discipline relationship looks like this. That this domestic discipline relationship looks like that. We have never done that, and so what we thought it was very important to answer some of the comments that had happened that we thought, we just don't feel like we need to answer some of the people that we felt like it's just not right to say that you're not fitting in this box. Therefore, we really don't feel like you fit into this quote-unquote category of domestic discipline. And then some of the individual comments where there have been individual stabs against either one of us, where we just say, look, hey, that's fine, but just because it doesn't necessarily fit your definition doesn't necessarily mean that it's not in the domestic discipline realm. And in fact, again, going back to the pillars that we've talked about on past podcasts, I believe it does because we fit into those pillars. But again, because of Ari and I's unique relationship, what you may think should be the norm is not going to be for us, and it's not going to be for every relationship of everybody who's watching and listening right now. Did you want to add something? Sorry, I just want to. And so I think, obviously, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but to continue a little bit in what I was trying to say is that where I think we all need to be very, very careful is remember that, and when we've never claimed to be, we're not experts. We don't claim to be experts, and we don't claim that everything that we do is going to work for everybody. We just wanted a platform where those of you who are in a domestic discipline relationship could come, have a place to listen and maybe get some things that we do to help you, but really build a community where we can all learn from each other and trade ideas and philosophies off of each other to help each individual domestic discipline relationship succeed. And also because this is a very small community from the standpoint that it is not the norm in our society. It's okay that it's not the norm, but because it isn't, there are people I know that are looking for, am I the only one doing this? Excuse me, is there others out there doing it? Oh, there is. This is great. I have an outlet. I have some people that I have common ground with that I can bounce ideas off of. That's the whole point of this.
Right. And just to reiterate, we are not the stereotypical picture of domestic discipline that's out there. And again, I think that's okay because we are a unique couple. We live in the United States, so that's
Thank
going
you, Lord.
Well, sometimes.
I think there's always pros and cons to every nation because, again, we got people in domestic discipline relationships all over the world, and we appreciate you watching and listening.
And so, that's going to, play into how we present our relationship and what is and is not acceptable within our relationship. But all that to say, we just wanted to be out there because we don't view domestic discipline as exclusive or, if you want to live within a relationship hierarchy, if you want to have a power differential relationship, even without a discipline structure, or if you want to have domestic discipline, you can do that regardless of how you structure that authority and how you interact with each other as a couple.
And so I would, for the sake of Arya's voice and everything, I'm going to kind of wrap this up. So it may be a little shorter than normal, but I actually think what I'm about to say to wrap it all up is going to actually take a little bit more time than just maybe a few minutes. All that to say, your domestic discipline relationship is your domestic discipline relationship, meaning no one has the right, I believe, to look down upon you and your spouse for the way your relationship works. Now, we've talked about before, as long as there's no abuse going on, and as long as it's mutual and the rules have been agreed upon and the boundaries have been agreed upon on how and where things need to happen, you don't need to justify that. You don't need to apologize for that, and you certainly don't need to answer the peanut gallery for what you're doing. And that goes with anything in life. I have mentioned before that I'm in the arts. One of the things you learn early on in the arts is to not pay attention to negative reviews or even positive reviews, because either one can be bad for you. Positive reviews can make you get big-headed about yourself, and negative reviews can make you feel bad. So what you learn early on is if you're getting hired consistently for gigs that you're going for, then you are good, and you don't have to listen to the peanut gallery on their opinions on what they think of your art, because really it doesn't matter. And that goes for your domestic discipline relationship. It's your relationship. How you have it structured matters, and if your relationship is succeeding by what you've set up, then it's working and it's good.
I just wanted to say, but I do appreciate the positive feedback that we get.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't trying to say that. But all I was trying to say is just like,
please leave the positive.
No, only leave negative or no comments at all. No, we're not. And I don't want this to sound like a rant from the standpoint that we're just angry and mad at the world. That's not the case. We got enough comments and things that we felt like we needed to address for the sake of the whole domestic discipline group.
And I don't mind constructive feedback either, but quite frankly, if you don't like how we talk to each other, if you think that I'm argumentative, if you think that I interrupt Coda, if you think I'm disrespectful, you don't have to listen to us.
Right.
You don't have to follow along. You can quietly leave.
It's fine.
Show yourself the door. It's fine. The fact of the matter is that Coda is the only one that gets to have an opinion on how I talk to him.
And like I just said, and that goes for your relationship. And there may be things, if a few of us were in this room together, I guarantee you there would be certain things that each dominant and submissive person in that relationship that for us would look at and go, that's different than the way ours looks, but we would never go, boy, they're doing it wrong. No, because that's your relationship.
It's not wrong if that's what the head of household has determined for his relationship and for his household.
Exactly. And again, that's going to differ from person to person. Just as our skin colors are different, so are our personalities, so are our beliefs on certain things. And that is what makes a relationship beautiful. And that's also why Arya married me and not some other guy. Of course, I had to do with how handsome I am as well. But no, but also that's also one of the reasons that I married her and not some other woman, because this is the relationship I wanted to be in. This is the person that I felt like I could do a good job sharing a life and building a life with.
And let me just say, there's no problem. There's nothing wrong with having a preference either way. So if you do want someone that is more, naturally submissive, that's more soft-spoken, that's more demure, go find that. That's fine.
Absolutely. Go for it. Nothing wrong.
But don't marry someone that's not that way and think that you're going to use domestic discipline to break them of bad habits or to train them out of their personality traits. It's just not going to happen.
And then on top of that, if you find what you're looking for and everything's working, that's great. Don't go around and point out another relationship that you think should be working the exact same way as yours.
And don't listen to other people's opinions. if you are head of household and you've decided that certain things are acceptable, certain things are not acceptable, unless it's someone pointing out like, hey, I think that this is borderlining abusive, like unless that's the case, and really objectively look at that to see if that's the case, and if it's not, you don't need to worry about it.
Move on. And so again, all that to say, we don't want to discourage anybody from leaving comments. We don't want to discourage anybody in the Discord community from having conversations and talking. We just felt like we had gotten enough of these comments that we were like, we just need to address this a little bit, because there's been a very small few, not the majority, who have just made some unfair comments towards us, and we wanted to address it, not because we got our feelings hurt necessarily, but because we didn't want anybody else in the group who has been such a crucial part of our live streams and things like that, and done an amazing job of being a part of our community, to then also be attacked by some small individuals who think that they need to comment on what they think is right or wrong with everybody's domestic discipline relationship. And we just want to say, we celebrate all of your relationships out there. We hope all of them are working well for you, and that you are all setting rules and boundaries and ideas that work for your relationship and no one else's, and to remember to not worry about what everybody else around you is doing. Like Mama said growing up, just worry about what you're doing. If everybody's jumping off a bridge, you don't necessarily need to go jump off a bridge with them, right? And so in concerning our relationship, that's why we wanted to talk and say, yeah, our relationship at times, you may go, wow, I don't know how Arya stands him. That may have come across your mind, but that's okay. You're not married to me. You don't have to stand me. Only she does. and what we've set up works for us.
I guarantee you that the thought process has absolutely gone the other way more times than not.
maybe not. But you know what, I'm happy to say, this December we will celebrate 16 years of marriage and more to go. Because our relationship is great, and I've got no issues with the way Arya behaves or does things. And we've set up the rules that if I do, I have the power and I can take care of it.
And we've been together for 20 years.
Right. We dated 4 years before that. Yeah. So we've been together a long time.
More than half our lives.
And for me, that number keeps going up and up and up. So anyway, I think we've beat this horse long enough, and we want to thank everybody. I hope it sounded more informative and not ranting, but I felt like we both felt like it was important that we address this issue as a topic to help the community of domestic discipline, not bring it down, because some things had happened where we saw the potential for things to go off the rails if this continued.
Well, not only to set the record straight for how we present our relationship, but also just to encourage others that if you don't fit into that norm, that's okay. That domestic discipline is not exclusive to a certain personality type, a certain relationship structure. That domestic discipline can fit into any type of relationship, any type of personality type, as long as you want it.
Yeah, and I think to kind of put the cherry on top, as they say, to absolutely remember that, as Arya said, your relationship is unique to you. And we're going to get some more detail on the husband side, because this is what Coda's Corner next episode is going to be. So husbands, get ready. We're going to continue this a little bit, because this may be an area where we need to go back to the basics a little bit. This is our Vince Lombardi moment. Gentlemen, this is a football. We're going to head back to the basics there. So
if you want to hear that Coda's Corner, and also if you want to have the opportunity to be part of our monthly live streams, as well as get the podcast in video form, all of that is accessible through our Patreon. The link is down below. And if you want to follow us on socials or send us an email, all of that information is down below as well.
Thanks for hanging in there. I know your voice is not feeling so good, but we'll also see our patrons now on the post show as well. That's part of Patreon.
Bye, guys.